Today we're doing the third set of notes in Graphs and Functions chapter, and we're going to be discussing slope and average rate of change. So, slope, the way is defined is rise over run. That's the most basic definition that you are given when you are in Algebra 1. The formula to find your slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And this is coming from a coordinate pair when you have x1 comma y1 and x2 comma y2. So again, that's kind of like the more Algebra 2 way. The newer way we're going to be discussing this here is average rate of change. So that little triangle means change. So this means the change in y over the change in x. You might have also heard this referred to as the symbol of delta if you had physics or chemistry thus far. So just to kind of quick review classifying lines. So this is what a positive slope would look like. This is what a negative slope would look like. A line like that has a slope of 0, and a vertical line has a slope, oops, spelled that wrong, has a slope of undefined. So this is when our m is undefined. Slope of 0 would be 0 over a number. No, that's not a hashtag, that's the number sign. And for an undefined, it would be a number divided by 0. So going through here, you're finding the slope of each line. I'm fine with you just simply counting your rise over run. So here, my rise over my run. So I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks over 2. Okay, remember it's always up and down first, left or right second. For my second one, letter B, I'm going down 1, 2, 3, so down 3 and right 1. Some of you might have said, oh, I want up 3, which is fine, but then you would be going left 1. So you would be going up 3 and left 1, but regardless, that still divides to be negative 3. And for letter C, this would just be a slope of 0. When you try to rise, there is no rise. You're rising 0, and the run would be any number. So let's say you did over 4. 0 over 4 still reduces to be 0. I do expect you to go that one step further and either say 0 or undefined when you're finding the slope. So now we're going to talk about finding this algebraically. I'm going to show you two different ways. So I'll do A differently than I do B, and then C, I'll kind of just discuss real quick. I'm never going to force you to do one way or the other, you pick. So the more traditional way that you are taught is you label x1, y1, x2, y2. And you use the formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here I would plug my numbers in. So I have 2 minus 5 over 3 minus negative 1. In the numerator, 2 minus 5 is negative 3. In the denominator, that double negative turns it to a plus, and I get negative 3 over 4. So that's the more traditional way using a formula. I think an easier way is just to kind of think about it. So here we're going to kind of just create like a little table. So here I have x and y. I'm going to take these two coordinates and I'm going to put it in a table format because I think it's a little bit easier to look at it this way. And now I'm going to ask you how my y's change and how my x's change. So my y's are not changing at all. So they're going up by 0. My x's are going down by 8. When I set this fraction up, it's always the change in y over change in x. So this would be 0 over negative 8, which is still 0. I'm going to show you letter C the same way because I think the formula is something you know. This way might be a little bit newer. So again, we set up our table. I have 3, 2, so that's coming from the x and the y, and then 3, 5. Okay, so my y's are going from 2 to 5, so they're going up by 3. My x's are not going up at all. They're going up by 0. Then I set up my change of y over change in x, which would be 3 over 0, which would be undefined. So now we're going to apply the same idea, but now it's not slope. It's definitely average rate of change, because slope only kind of pertains if it's a linear function. So now we are getting away from linear functions, but I can still find an average rate of change as long as I'm given an interval. So for this one, I'm given the interval from 0 to 2. So again, I'm going to kind of make my table. I'm also going to show you the visual way. These are the two x values, so I'm putting them on the x side. Again, it says x, x. That's why I put them on the x side of the graph, or the table, sorry. Now you need to find the matching y values. So when x is 0, the picture is right here. So the matching y value is 0. And then I go over to 2, and I go down to the function. So this is where the function is happening. So when x is 2, y is -4. And now I'm going to ask myself, what is my change in y over change in x? So when I do the same thing I just did in the past couple examples, I'm always going to go from the top number to the bottom. So from 0 to -4, I went down by 4. On the left side, from the x's, from 0 to 2, I go up by 2. And then I set up my change in y over change in x. So -4 over 2 will divide to be -2. If you're more of a visual person and you wanted to count the blocks, so from the 2 dots that I highlighted up here, and again I'll just use that highlighter to make them a little bit bolder, I would be going down 4 and right 2, and I would still get the answer of -2. So again, I'm going to do that same way, making the table, just because I think it's a newer way to kind of just expose you. So when x is -5 and when x is -3. And again, that's coming from those 2 values. They will always be given to you. So when x is -5, I go and find my matching y value. So that'll be down here. Okay, and then let's write that in our table. When x is -3, I go up and my graph is right here, which goes with 1. And now we find the change in y over change in x. So on the y side, -7 to a +1 is going up by 8. My x side, from -5 to -3, is going up by 2. And then the last part is just making sure you set up your fraction correctly. Again, it's the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y is the 8. Change in x is the 2. So the final answer is 4. Again, if you're a visual person, let me come over here. I'm going up by 8 and over by 2. And that still divides to be 4. So again, last thing, we're going to kind of just put it all together. So now the picture is removed from you. So this is kind of why I introduced it in that last problem. You are given an equation, and you're given the 2 x values. So I'm going to make my table, and I'm going to put the 2 x values on the x side of the table. Well, now I need to find the matching y values, so I'm going to plug them in. I'll do that down at the bottom as some side work. So at the bottom, I'll do 3 times -4 plus 5. So I get -12 plus 5. That gives me -7. Now I'm going to plug in a +3 into that equation up here. So 3 times 3 plus 5. I get 9 plus 5, which will give me 14. And now I need to figure out the change in y over the change in x. So let me just set my fraction up and we can just fill it in. So my y's are going from -7 to a +14. So they are going up by 21. And my x's from -4 to a +3 are going up by 7. And when I divide this out, I get a positive 3. Now, at any point you should have or may have realized that this is y equals mx plus b. And remember, m is your slope. So notice right here, that 3 is your slope. So you could have answered that without doing any of the work, as long as you recognize that this was a linear equation. So using that idea for letter B, I don't really even need to use these. This is a linear equation. This is in the whole mx plus b format. We could kind of split it up, and instead of saying x over 2, we could say 1/2 over 2x minus 7. And now you can clearly see that your slope is 1/2. So the answer is 1/2. Last example, we cannot do that shortcut because this is not linear. So we're going to set up our table. X's are 2 and 3. We're going to do some scratch work off to the side to find the y values. So I have 2 squared minus 3 times 2 plus 5. So 4 minus 6 plus 5. I apologize for my phone. 4 minus 6 is negative 2 plus 5. So I just put those two together to get that negative 2. And now when I add these together, I get 3. So now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to input 3. So I have 3 squared minus 3 times 3 plus 5. 9 minus 9 plus 5. The 9's cancel, and I'm left with 5. So very last step, and this is the easy part. You've done all the hard work now. My y's went up by 2. My x's go up by 1. 2 over 1 will leave us with the answer of 2. So I know that was a lot, but hopefully, again, mostly review.